This is a very important issue because we have such experience. Because the most dangerous thing is when the adversaries capture the political elite of the state to spread their influence at the expense of the real interests or real security and national interests of the country. And this is what exactly happened in the past during the period between the years 2014 and 2021 in the Czech Republic. Because during that time we had a pro-Russian president who, for example, denied the Russian invasion to Ukraine and also the Russian presence in the country in 2014, who also rejected afterwards the sanctions against Russia because of, or calling them as a dysfunctional and damaging to mutual relations. But the years after it was even worse because he in fact was supporting in fact the Russian state terrorism by denying the Russian, let's say, responsibility for the Skripal and Verbivatice cases, the famous cases when the GRU agents were involved, so he denied. And then also he was very active in the economic field, so he lobbied very much for the contract on the new nuclear unit at the Dukovany nuclear power plant to be built by Rosatom. So it was very, broad and very visible. But the same happened also with Chinese, because during that time we had a very powerful Chinese political lobby that consists of, president, and then also one of the major government parties, the Social Democratic Party. And the result was that, for example, they signed a very several declaration promoting one China policy and supporting one China policy as a result to the visit of Dalai Lama in the Czech Republic. And what is very interesting that this declaration was signed by all highest representatives of the state at the time, which was president, prime minister, and chairmen of both chambers of our parliament, which was a very strange situation and also very, very dangerous one. And also, they were also very active in the economic field because they promoted Chinese economic interests, especially in the telecommunications sphere. And also during the COVID-19 pandemics, they supported and promoted Chinese medical equipment to be accepted in the Czech Republic. So this is very dangerous and very warning cases from the past. But what is the remedy, let's say? What is the best approach how to fight in such situation where the political elites are involved? The best case is to change the government and the president through the elections. And this is what exactly happened in the Czech Republic after 2021, when the government and the president were changed during elections. So now the result is that the foreign malign influence in our country has significantly diminished since 2021, and we are now in a more favorable situation than it was before. The EU and NATO are closely cooperating in their fight against hybrid threats and malign influence. And the main joint platform for this cooperation is the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats in Helsinki, which is the one of the joint platforms. But of course, both institutions have their own platforms as well, because NATO is a military alliance and is concentrating mostly on military domain. So NATO established the NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center in Tallinn, focusing on countering hybrid threats in cyberspace primarily. And also NATO established the NATO Strategic Communications Center of Excellence in Riga, which is focusing on countering this malign influence in information sphere, which is very interesting. And the same applies to the European Union. The European Union is concentrating, because it's a civilian organization, it's concentrating more on fighting disinformation directly. And during the last years, the the EU adopted the action plan against disinformation, against disinformation, that is concentrating also on, let's say, recommendations or code of conduct for internet platforms and social networks. And also afterwards, the EU adopted the European Democracy Action Plan, which goes even farther and in fact directly regulates internet platforms and social networks in this field. And of course, I should remind you also that there is this Stratcom task force within the European External Action Service, which is directly concentrating on fighting disinformation. And they also established a platform, in fact, the website EU versus Disinfo, which is very famous. So clearly defined national and security interests are the basis for the, let's say, successful defense against the hybrid warfare, against the malign influence. Of course, these security and national interests must be followed by the political elite of the country and not just stay on the paper, which is the best case, or which is the case which should not happen, let's say, in such scenario. So, of course, in case of small and medium-sized countries like Czech Republic, the importance of having allies is the most important thing to safeguarding national interests. And of course, for us, the membership in the EU and NATO are the absolutely vital issues also in this sense to safeguarding national interests. And therefore, we assess the EU and NATO as the key pillars of our security. Businesses or corporations, they have own interest. Let's say the main interest for them is to make a profit, which not often correlates with the national interests or security interests of the country. So if they want to invest in problematic or adversary countries, they should not be supported by the state or the state representatives in such case. Okay, you can still invest there, but at your risk, at your own risk. And on the other side, of course, the state must not support or let's say strengthen the economic dependence on adversaries at home. So the thing is that it should be clearly stated which sectors are strategic for the state, and to these sectors the companies from the adversary countries should not be, let's say, should not have access to these sectors, clearly stated. And what I'm talking about, which sectors are the strategic? For example, for the Czech Republic, it's the energy sector, like oil, gas, nuclear, or for example, also telecommunications, like including 5G networks, which is the new one. And to these sectors, the companies from the adversary countries should have not an access, so should not be invited. So education and supporting the critical thinking is the most important thing to build the resilience and the resilient society. So these two things, I think, are the most important, education and critical thinking. And of course, on the other side, very important issue plays also independent media. And at this situation, I'm talking about also public media that should be independent and to present the independent views. And another point, of course, the strategic communication of the state. And this strategic communication of the state, I mean by this common approach of the main representatives of the state. So, for example, in our case, the best way how to fight, malign influence, to have this strategic communication that is discussed and or, cooperated together between the government and the president as the main representatives of the state.